Welcome to How Solutions and Projects Relate. So in this video, we'll be talking about how a solution is a group of projects. One analogy I've heard is that if a solution is like a house, then a project is like a room in the house. We'll be setting up a new command line project. I'll give you an overview of the structure of our solution for this section. And in the case of Visual Studio, you're going to need to add a main.cpp source code file to our project. By the end of it, it'll look something like this. You'll have a second section right next to section 1, nice and organized. And in there, amongst other clutter, you'll have a Bull Cow Game project folder. And in that project folder, you will have your main.cpp source code file. Okay, so let's dive in and get this section set up. And at the same time, let's understand how folders for solutions and projects relate. So I'm going to go into Visual Studio, and I'm going to create myself a new project. It's very similar in Xcode. Now, in Visual Studio, I'm looking for Visual C++ Win32 console application. That's where I should be in Visual Studio. If you are in Xcode, then you're looking for this OSX application command line tool. Okay, that's on the slides. Great. So here in Xcode, when I give my project a name, I'm just going to call it project for now. You're welcome to follow along, or you can wait until the challenge to do all this. Then it's actually going to name the solution the same thing as the project, but I'm going to rename that to solution so that it's clear. So my new project name is project, and my solution name is solution. This is my folder. I'm going to not create a Git repository and click OK. Now, in Visual Studio, you're going to be asked a few more questions. I'm going to select Empty Project and turn off SDL. Now, remember this for your challenge. When it comes to your challenge, this is how you're going to want to set up your application. You leave the top radio button by default, but we select an empty project and we untick SDL. We basically make it as simple as we can. And click Finish.
Hi there, Sam here with an update for Visual Studio 2017. If you are using this version of Visual Studio, then you won't get the same wizard that you got with Ben. So what you're going to get is something more like this. We go to File, New Project. Then what we will see is this Windows console application, and if you open that, then you would get no window, so you wouldn't be able to create an empty project. It would have stuff in. So if we want to go with a minimal project like Ben is going with, we select empty project. I'm going to go ahead and enter in my solution name, so Bull Cow Game, and the solution is going to be section 2, just like Ben had. Section _2, and again, I'm not going to be creating a Git repository, creating the solution directory, and I'm using the empty project. Go ahead and click OK. And now this will be almost exactly like Ben has it. The only difference is if we try and run the console application, it's not going to quite work at this stage because we didn't actually create this as a console application. So let's go ahead and make sure that works. If we go to Edit, sorry, not Edit, but rather to Project, Properties, find the linker in the sidebar and expand that out, then go into System, and you've got this interesting thing, this interesting set of options here on the right, and you've got the option names on the left and then the option itself on the right. So we want to change the subsystem option. You can go and select the drop-down menu and select console as the subsystem. This just means that now when you run the console application, it will stay open rather than automatically closing. So we can go ahead and apply that and click OK, and now you're in exactly the same place as Ben.
All right, now in the case of Xcode, it will have actually set up a little more than it does in Visual Studio. In some ways, it will have created a main.cpp file, but we'll talk about that in a moment. Let's just click and see what it's made. It's made a folder called Solution, which is our solution folder. Inside that, we have a folder called Project, which is our project folder, and then we have a project.vxproj. And in Xcode, you'll have a very, very similar setup, but there'll be less files, and under Project, you'll have project.xcodeproj. Okay, fantastic. So that's how it works. What I want you to do now is set up the section proper. So I'm going to go back and delete the solution folder because we just don't need that, and that was just a test. And I'm going to give you your challenge slide. So your challenge is as follows, setting up your project. I want you to end up with this. Unreal Course, or whatever you've called your folder that holds all your sections, section 02, that's your section or solution subfolder. In Visual Studio, it's called a solution, and you'll have one solution per section. In Xcode, well, they don't really have the idea of solutions, so it's just a folder. Inside that section 02 folder, we want a Bull Cow Game subfolder. That's the project folder, and it should be automatically created by your IDE. And then within that subfolder, you'll find bullcowgame.vcxproj or .xcodeproj if you're in Xcode. Right, so that's what I want you to end up with. And inside bullcowgame, as an extra challenge on Visual Studio, you're going to need to create yourself a main.cpp. You're going to need to add a file to the solution. See if you can work out how to do it yourself. Of type C++ and just call it main. Doesn't need any code in it for now, but that's it. In Visual Studio, in Xcode over on the Mac, you'll find that it's already done this for you. But in Visual Studio, you're going to need to do the work. So go ahead, pause the video, see if you can get all that set up right now. It doesn't matter if you struggle, doesn't matter if it takes a little while. It is good because this is teaching you how the folder structure works. Hey, welcome back. So the first part of this challenge is relatively straightforward. It's what I showed you before. We open our IDE.
By the way, if you're an Xcode user, the timestamp for your instructions is now showing on the screen, so skip ahead there to get the correct instructions.
We make a new project. We're going to go Win32 console application, or similarly in Xcode as I showed you before. Going to call it bullcowgame because that's the name of the actual project and the application that we are going to be making. But I'm going to rename the solution to section 02 for organization. I'm going to leave both of these checked. Well, you certainly want to create directory for the solution. That's the whole point of naming the directory here. But I'm going to create a Git repository. If you don't know what that means, just leave it unchecked for now. It'll save some disk space. It's to do with version management, and we're not doing that at this stage in the course. Okay, cool. So then the settings I asked you to set was a console application, because that's what we're aiming at, and then I want an empty project with no SDL. Now, it doesn't matter what any of these things actually mean. The motivation here is we want the simplest possible project, so it's empty and it has no clutter in the project. So we finish off.
Now, if you're using Visual Studio 2017, remember to refer to my instructions at the beginning of the video that show you how the setup for 2017 differs from what Ben is doing here with 2015.
Great, so that part of the project's fairly straightforward. Let's see, we have a directory called section02, we have a subdirectory called bullcowgame, and inside it we have a bullcowgame.vcxproj or xcodeproj. Fantastic. So that's good. Now we need this main.cpp file. If you're on Xcode, by the way, you can stop watching now and skip to the next video because you'll already have it already done. But in Visual Studio, there are some subtleties here. So how do you get this main.cpp file added? Well, there are two ways, really. There's lots of ways, but the easiest way is to click into the project. So this is the solution here, which contains one project. That project is bullcowgame. You right-click on the project, and you could say Add New Item. All right, now the easiest way is to do that. So let's do that. Add new item. It's a C++ file, and we're simply going to call it main.cpp. Oops, I'll get there in the end. There we go, main.cpp. Add. Now this does lots for us. If we look on the file system, there it is, as planned. It's also attached as a source file, a source code, to the project. Okay, that's cool. And we're done. That's the challenge finished. Now, there's another way you may have attempted this, and it will cause you a little problem. If you'd have gone new file, that's okay. And you may have said Visual C++ and C++ file, very nice. And then you may have put something in it, because otherwise you'll realize you can't save it until you've actually done something, like maybe made and deleted a space. And then there's a star, which means it's an unsaved file. Now, if you go File and Save, or Save All, it'll come up and say, well, what do you want to call this guy, and where do you want to put it? Well, now you've got to go work out where to put it, which is in section 02, bullcowgame, next to the main CPP as, say, test, and you save it. And you're still not done, because look, it's not actually a part of the project. You see, project source files don't include it. That's a pain, right? So there are several ways you can get it there, but one is that you could go Add, Existing Item, go and find it, and finally, it's connected and part of your solution. So I'm actually going to delete test. We don't need it. Remove by right-clicking and then delete, and it's going to delete it off the disk. But you see that by far the easiest way is to right-click the project, add, new item, and it does it all for us. That's it. So congratulations, you are set up. I think you understand that a solution is a container for one or more projects. Our project is called bullcowgame. Our solution folder is called section02 here. And we are good to start coding. So the rest of this video is just for Xcode users. If you're on Visual Studio, we're finished. Just skip to the next video. So here in Xcode on a Mac, you want to create a new Xcode project. You want to choose the OSS X section and then Application, then Command Line Tool, and click Next. So the project name is going to be bullcowgame. And we don't have a concept of solutions here. We're just going to use a folder for solutions over in Xcode. Make sure that everything else is, just put a name in for your organization name and an identifier as a single word. It doesn't really matter what you put here, but it does matter that you choose C++ as the language. Click Next. So this is my Unreal course folder, empty here. In there, I'm going to create what I'm calling a solution folder over in Visual Studio, but as far as Xcode is concerned, it's just a folder to organize things. And this is section 02. And then once I have section 02 selected here, I click Create. Then my main CPP file ends up in Downloads, in my case Unreal Course, section 02, Bull Cow Game again, main CPP. That's the folder that we end up in. And here is your main CPP file. We don't even need to create one in Xcode. It's as simple as that. So that's it. We just want to quit Xcode. And if you want to reopen that, you go to Downloads, Unreal Course Section 2, Bull Cow Game, and just go and open the .xcode proj file. And that will take you back to where we just were. Great. Congratulations, and I'll see you soon.